Hey there, I'm just getting back from doing my deliveries today, and I want to talk to you all about how to sell your produce. All right, got those coolers unloaded. I keep them in the garage in between delivery days. So before I get into this video today, if you're new to the channel or you're not familiar with my whole story, my name is Josh Satin. I have a small market garden in Raleigh, North Carolina at my suburban house here. And I ran a farm here for 2 years and then ran a nonprofit urban farm last year, and I'm back to farming at home this year. I've sold my stuff to restaurants and local families and helped set up a farm stand at the urban farm. So I have quite a bit of different kinds of experience. And what I want to do today is talk about your different sales outlets and ways that you can increase your sales, make more money, gain customers, all those kinds of things. Now, it's important, we all talk about sustainable farms in terms of the ecological benefit and all that kind of stuff. But really, for a farm to be sustainable, it has to make money year after year so that it can be sustainable and exist after a few years. So let's get into it. I want to try to speak to as many of you as possible. You could be market gardening already and have vegetables like this in your field, or maybe soon. You might be in that farmsteading world where you're homesteading, selling a little bit of your produce. Maybe you're a homesteader thinking about farming. Maybe you already have a farm, but you're looking to increase your profits and your sales. So I'm gonna address all those things today. Now, I think a lot of people out there, when I start talking to them about this kind of stuff, this marketing and sales strategy, is that they kind of have the approach where if you build it, they will come. You know, you grow all these vegetables and of course everyone's gonna wanna buy it, but that's not always the case. In fact, it's probably never the case unless you're in like a seriously urban environment where people are like walking by your farm all the time. So you need to put an effort into marketing and sales so that you can get profit on your farm. And what we're gonna cover today is gonna be all of those things. We're gonna talk about different sales strategies and the pros and cons and tips for each of those. We're talking about some overall tips for marketing your produce and some other things to consider when you're trying to increase profits on your farm and get more sales. Let's get into marketing. And this is always a tough discussion with farmers, and I think it's frankly because farmers don't want to do it because they're uncomfortable with it. I know there's a lot of farmers who are more introverted than extroverted, and you know, they're into growing. That's why they became a farmer. But really, for small scale farming to work, we need a direct marketing strategy. We need to sell directly to our customers to make that kind of profit that we need to be successful and be sustainable. And so to do that, we need to market ourselves and get in front of the customers that we need to get in front of. Before I get into tips about marketing for farming, I want to tell a little bit of a story. You guys probably know I was a professional brewer for 5 years, and before that I was a high school teacher. And in between brewing jobs, I actually opened a homebrew store selling ingredients and equipment to people looking to homebrew. And that's actually this hat that I'm wearing today. And I've worn it in some of my older videos too. But my big takeaway from owning that business, that was my first business, was that I was terrible at marketing and I needed to learn how to do it because I had that if you build it, they will come approach. And I was successful in that I made enough money to make it keep working. And I was able to sell the business to someone when we moved down here. But the reality is I needed to learn how to market, and that is one thing I really focused a lot on with my first version of my farm and helping Raleigh City Farm, and now, especially right now, is all about marketing. And it's kind of a tougher topic, as I said, because people don't want to talk about it, but it's super important. And marketing isn't just, you know, advertisements. It's a combination of things. It's a lot of things in that marketing term. You know, obviously I think you should all be active on Instagram telling your stories. I made a video about Instagram. No one really watched it. Again, people don't want to talk about marketing, but I think it's important that you tell your story on Instagram, and that's a place where when you first start talking to people, if it's customers, chefs, people at a farmer's market, they're going to go online, they're going to try to connect with you, and people really want to be connected with the farmers, and that's why they're buying from local small farms, is to know where their food's coming from, and you need to be able to share that with people. And if you're interested, I'll make more content on that, but I'll get into some more of that stuff later. Another thing is, if you're, you know, able to get email addresses from people, you know, and sending out newsletters, things like that, make sure that people feel connected to you. I think that's going to be really important. And this will kind of be a theme through a lot of what's going on in this video. But also keep in mind that your farm itself is a marketing device. I say this all the time, but your farm should be tidy and pretty and professional. And when people see that in either coming by your farm for a visit or online or showing people photos, whatever. You know, I think it's important that the farm looks self and also the produce looks good. When you're bringing produce to your customers, it should always look top notch. And if you're subpar with your quality, you're not going to get the same price and you may not get that customer back. So be really professional with everything that you do and try to make it look as, you know, top shelf as possible, and that will help a lot with your marketing. Let's get into sales outlets, and I often recommend that you have a diverse sales outlet strategy, at least more than one sales outlet. And I know I'm not really following my own rule this year so far, and I am just going to be selling to restaurants, but I am exploring a second option, and we'll see how that goes. This is a very weird case for me because my farm is super small, and I think it's going to work for me in my market here. But it's always helpful to have a diverse strategy in case something happens. 2020 was a great example with COVID. I know a lot of farmers that either the farmers market closed or they were restaurants only, and that market you know, got a lot smaller, and they were able to shift things around because they had a diverse sales outlet. So I think it's important. But first, let's talk about restaurants, because that's kind of what I have the most experience with. In 2018, I sold to families. 2019 was mainly restaurants. 2020, I set up a farm stand at Raleigh City Farm, and you know, I'm back to restaurants now. And I think the biggest takeaways from working with restaurants is relationships and knowing the chefs or restaurant owners and making sure you're, you know, really building those relationships and have really good communication with them. So there's a couple things here I want to talk about. One is, if you're looking to get restaurant accounts, you really have to, in my opinion, the most effective way to do that is networking and getting a warm handoff. I reached out to chefs I worked with in the past, and most of them were like, yeah, cool, let's do this. And they kind of knew me already and were comfortable with what I produced and wanted to buy produce from me. But then you have to sort of, you know, find new accounts, and you can just walk into restaurants with samples and price sheets and stuff. I haven't had the best luck with that. And if you do try that, just make sure that you don't go in during service hours. That's like when meals are going on and they're really busy. The best thing you can do is network and get a warm handoff. Set up an appointment with a chef so they actually have their attention and they'll give you a few minutes. Usually if you do that, they'll be more than happy to hang out and chat and taste everything that you have and give you attention, and bring in like a lot of samples. Like, don't be stingy about it. Like, bring them in a whole bunch of stuff and say, here, try this out, you know, and usually they'll be like, oh, cool, I'll make a dish out of this, or I didn't even think about using this. So that can be really helpful. It's really about communication and also following up with chefs. Often you'll send them a text message. Pretty much every chef I know kind of works over text message, and they won't respond to you, and you just want to follow up with them. And usually when you do, they're usually happy that you followed up with them. They're like, dude, I totally forgot. I was super busy. I was in the middle of this or that. So follow up with them. Don't be hesitant to do that. They often really do thank you about that. So those are kind of the main tips with restaurants. Again, having really good produce and being really consistent with your produce. Make sure that you have, like, if they want lettuce, make sure you have lettuce for them every week, because they're going to start, you know, depending on that for certain dishes. So those are kind of my main tips with restaurants. I might make a separate video again about that. I did want to make one a couple years ago, but maybe I'll make a follow-up. CSA, or community supported agriculture. It is a thing that started a few decades ago when communities were supporting farms by giving them money at the beginning of the season to pay for inputs and pay them for the season. And then the output of the farm belonged to the CSA members. And some years were better, some years were not. It was kind of an investment in your local farm. And I think that was super cool. And I think it's morphed into something different now. So when people talk about CSA boxes, they're really just talking about produce boxes, and it's kind of a different thing altogether. And one of the big differences is that people want to customize their boxes, because now there are a lot of options for local farms, and sometimes it can be a little bit competitive as well depending on where you are. And I think people really do want that customization ability because they have specific diets, or they're just not as adventurous. You know, they don't want to just get random vegetables and try to figure that out for the week. And this way they can kind of like shop and get what they need for that week from their local farm. And I think that's really cool. In terms of customization, it's definitely really neat, but very tricky for the farmer. And a couple of great examples of CSA farms that I've talked to. 10 Mothers Farm is incredible. They've been doing their CSA for years now. have a waiting list and have good customer retention. I'll leave a link down below for a video I did with them about how they customize their boxes and that sort of stuff. Another great example is Weaver Acres, and I did a video with Brendan, and they have a cool point system. So they sell their CSA at the beginning of the season, and then everyone's allocated a certain amount of points. And then when people come to the farm to pick up their produce, everything's divvied up by points, so there's no money exchanged hands. It's kind of like, you know, you can buy whatever you want with your points. So I think that's really cool too. Another tricky part about CSAs in making sure they're successful is that you have enough diversity on your farm to fill boxes with enough crops every week. So usually you need like 6 to 10 every week is kind of a good estimate. And I think that's really challenging as a farmer because, you know, you have to be good at growing all those crops and make sure they're coming out at the right times, you know, so that your boxes are full every week. And I think that can be really tricky, especially as a new farmer, because as you guys know, every crop is different and has its challenges. And I think you got to be pretty experienced to be able to do that well. And so that is definitely a challenge. And I think for farm size too, you need a little bit bigger of a farm. I'd say at least 1/2 to 3/4 of an acre of intense vegetable production to do a good CSA, because you need to grow a lot of crops, and a lot of those are crops that take up more space and are less value, so you need a little bit more space to do that. Another option with the CSA is, you know, if you're just getting started with it or your farm's only a certain size, is talk to other farmers that grow similarly to you that you could, you know, feel comfortable vouching for, and that your customers would feel comfortable buying produce from them, and bring some of their stuff in. So if you can't grow onions or potatoes, like find a farm nearby that you can bring those in, and just be really upfront with your customers and let them know where they come from. And I think that's fine. It's fine to bring in produce from other farms and sell it with yours. You just have to be honest with your customers so that they know that. I think that's really not cool if you are selling produce that you're claiming is your own and just buying it from somewhere else. So lots of tips there for CSAs. Again, I think it's challenging, but it's a very cool model. Farmers markets are a great sales outlet. I personally have not done them, and I don't have experience with them personally because I just wasn't really willing to give up every Saturday to go sell it as a farmer's market. And it's a full day of work by the time you load up, you get there, you set up, you hang out and sell stuff, pack up, come home, unload. So it turns out to be another full day of work, and I didn't really want to commit to that. But it's great to when you're getting started, and also when you're continuing, because, you know, when you go to a farmer's market, you can just put whatever you want on the table and sell what you have that day, which is great, as opposed to, you know, trying to figure out box programs and, you know, selling exactly what chefs want and really getting the quantity they need. So if you have a little bit more or less or something, that's cool. A lot of farmers have been doing this for a while. They still rely heavily on their income from farmers markets. They've built relationships with the market, with the people there, and that's how they interact with the customers. And I think being really consistent with your quality and what you bring to market is important, because then you build those relationships with those customers. So if you're known for lettuce or microgreens or peppers or strawberries or whatever you're growing, people will know, like, oh, I want to go get my, you know, my lettuce from Josh because he's got great lettuce, and those sorts of things. Another thing is great to try to collect email addresses, which I said before, in case anything happens with your market, and then you have connections to your customers. You can also give them a heads up of what you have that week, and, you know, maybe give them a little bit of a story about what's going on the farm, things like that. People want to feel connected to the farmer. That's one of the reasons why they go to farmers markets. So you got to keep in mind also that farmers markets aren't everywhere, and they vary a lot in terms of the kind of customers they bring in and the quantity of customers they bring in. In some places, the farmers markets are out of control. They're awesome, but they're competitive to get into. So you might need to apply at the right time of year and just chat it up with the manager and make sure you're, you know, in the right position to get in there. I know I looked into it a while ago just to sort of see what was going on in the area, and there was definitely certain times of the year you had to apply to get in. So plan ahead, and don't forget also, you'll need a little bit more infrastructure when you're going to a farmer's market. You'll need a setup for the farmer's market, so that's another expense to get started. But again, it's great because you can just bring whatever you have and put it on the table. That wraps up the 3 main sales outlets. And if you're looking for more information about farming and growing food, this is a perfect opportunity for me to talk about today's show sponsor, which is Growing for Market magazine. I know I talk about them a lot, but they're an amazing organization that's been in existence for 30 years, and they provide a lot of educational content written by farmers who know way more about this than I do. And I really recommend you go check them out. They have a print version and an online version, and I just got the recent version, the print version in, and I have to say, in this age of digital everything, it's really nice sometimes to get a paper copy. It's very exciting, and it gets you a little bit jazzed up about farming. They also have a database of 1,600 articles you can look through, so much information and really high level stuff. I really recommend you go check them out. I have a coupon code SHOVEL for 25% off, and I'll leave links down below for you guys to go check them out, and I highly recommend that you do. I've had some great feedback about people that are new subscribers, and I also really want to thank them for sponsoring this channel. Now, let's get on to some alternative sales outlets and a bunch of other things to help you make more money on your farm. In addition to those main sales outlets, let's talk about some alternatives. These might be great for your business or a great way to add on to your business and help diversify those sales outlets. So I know that we're sort of working through the pandemic still right now, but any sort of gathering, regular gathering of people is going to be awesome. So maybe you're involved in a religious community and you could set up a table there for any sort of regular events that happen and talk to the people involved and then let people know that you'll be there and maybe you can sell some stuff there. It's a great way to get started if you're not already doing one of the other outlets and you just have a small amount of food to move. Another one is, think about like sporting events or your kids' activities or things like that where you just have a regular, group of people getting together and then you can be consistent with those people too and they'll know that you'll be there, selling stuff and they'll be ready for that. Also think about a roadside stand. I know that's not applicable to everybody, but if you live on a busy road or you can get up some signage, you can do a, really good business that way. Great example of that is Broken Spoke Farm. I did some videos with them and they actually do a 7-day-a-week honor system farm stand. So they just put out their produce in the morning and then it's all like electronic with, I don't know what they're using, but Venmo, PayPal, that kind of stuff. And they said it's been great. And I think a lot of times the honor system farm stand don't work for everyone and everywhere. A lot of times people just leave extra money and they actually wind up getting more than what they sell for, but that's another story. Another thing is offering different products, and Broken Spoke is a great example. They drove a huge amount of business and interest in their farm by selling ice cream at their farm stand on the weekends, and that's been incredible as well. So a lot of different alternatives out there. You can definitely get creative, but if you really want to sell your produce, you can definitely figure it out. Pricing can be very tricky, and it's a question I get asked about all the time, and I think it varies a lot depending on where you live, what you're selling, and where you're selling it. But I think before we get into determining prices, we need to kind of flip it around a little bit, and I think most farmers don't tend to do this, but it goes back to the idea of having a sustainable farm by having a profitable business. You need to figure out how much you need to sell something for to make money on that product. So just because everyone else is selling tomatoes for $2 a pound, if you do that, are you making money with tomatoes at $2 a pound? You really have to think about that. And if you can't get what you need to be profitable on that crop, then you either need to figure out a different way to sell it, different way to market it, or maybe grow different kinds of crops. So keep that in mind with everything. But in that research and when you're trying to figure out how much to sell your produce for, really you have to talk to people and research your local market. And you may not be in an area that you can get enough money for your produce. I get a lot of people that send messages to me that are in really rural areas and like, I can't sell eggs for this much, or I can't get more than this much for a pepper or squash or lettuce. So you need to do that research if you're thinking about opening a farm, because you may not be profitable for the kind of stuff that we're talking about here, and you may not have the market to sell that. I mean, you can build it over time, but it's going to take a lot of education, and you may not have the finances to push it along that far. But one easiest way to check prices is go to the farmer's market, see what everyone else is selling it for. I think that's a great way to just get a good sort of litmus test on the prices, is going to a farmer's market. Go to local, organic supermarkets like Whole Foods or some of the independent markets. That'll give you an idea too. If you're looking to sell, directly to customers, farmer's market, obviously, some of the other things we mentioned before. And that'll give you prices for like what retail's worth for your CSA box when you're trying to price that out as well. With restaurants, really the best thing to do is talk to the chefs and be really straightforward with them and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Does that work for you? Or how much would you sell this for? And if you're really upfront with them, they'll just say, hey, no, we usually buy lettuce for this much, but yours is way better, so maybe we'll give you another $1 to a pound, or things like that. Just have a conversation with them. And if you roll in with really high prices and they can't make that work to make the dish profitable, then they're not going to buy from you. So make sure you have a conversation with them to try to figure out your prices. There's no like, you need to get this much per bunch of radish or this much per pound of lettuce mix. It varies a lot, but you have to do your homework and you have to make sure it's profitable. Well, this video turned out to be a little bit longer than I expected, but I have a lot to share with you guys. And I know I focus a lot about infrastructure and growing and soil and all the things to produce produce. But if you produce produce, it doesn't mean you're gonna be making money. So you gotta put a lot of thought into that as well. And I think the most successful farms really have the whole package. So in conclusion, remember, there's a lot of things to think about. Focus on marketing. If you're not comfortable with it, find someone who can help you with it. Not everyone is comfortable doing everything, and so it's okay to ask for help and make sure that you're marketing your farm well. Be professional with your customers. You know, don't show up to a farmer's market just looking like an absolute slob or rolling to the back of a restaurant. You know, you're not showing up with like a jacket and tie, but you know, like be clean. Don't be like, look like you're coming right off the farm. That's what people want to see, but make sure that you're focusing on relationships and communication and being consistent with your products and really high quality. And if you start with that and just work on building that year after year, you'll do fine on your farm. And make sure that your pricing is where it's at so that you can make money and be a sustainable farm. I'm sure you guys have a lot more questions. I'm happy to do some more follow-up videos on more specific topics. I'll leave links down below for all the videos I can think that are helpful related to this subject. Hopefully you guys are having a great start to your season and maybe you're trying to plan out how to sell things, and hopefully this was helpful. So thank you so much for watching. Please hit subscribe if you're not already, and we'll see you in the next one.